Why is it that the most talented artists, are the least supported? I kind of want to go over the hidden reasons why real artists feel invisible today and why the art world kind of rewards persona over skill. So if you're tired of feeling like you need connections, clout, or gallery just to be taken seriously, just stay with me for this because the stakes are real. Learn this now or spend years thinking you're not good enough when the system is the problem, not you. Okay, so just hear me out for a moment because this is one of those truths that artists really like to tell themselves but never really get to say out loud. You know that feeling you get, that sense that the art world doesn't really care about the art anymore? It's not really about art itself. Well, you're not really imagining it, and you're definitely not alone about this. I've talked to so many artists from so many places doing so many different things. Tiny cities, big cities, countries where art feels like a luxury, countries where art feels like a rebellion. And everybody's saying the same thing right now with the same tired, heavy truth that, I feel like I'm working harder than everyone else, but I'm getting seen less. Isn't that crazy? Because you'd think the people with the most skill would rise. You'd think the people who stay up late, building, designing, writing, painting, the ones who actually love the craft would be the ones who get the spotlight. But that's not how it works anymore. And it's not really your fault. The art world today is built around one thing: infrastructure, right? It's not about ability, it's not talent, it's not originality, not soul. Infrastructure, connections, clout, visibility, the ability to look like someone the industry can profit from. So if you don't have any of those, you're already starting from behind. So when you say it feels like, most talented people don't get the spotlight, only the people with the right connections or the big personality or the most perfect online persona, you're describing the real state of the art world right now. There used to be this idea that talent rises no matter what, that if you were good enough, the world would just find you somehow. But the truth is that talent doesn't really scale. Skill doesn't scale. Passion doesn't scale. But persona scales, right? And the art world figured that out pretty fast, I will say. So if you think about the artists you're told are important, think about the ones who get posted everywhere. Think about the ones everyone pretends to understand, but just because they're in the scene of it all, right? Are they always the most talented? I think we all know the answer to that because it isn't hard to say it out loud. The art world is a place where personality, politics, and placement matter more than the mastery of art itself. And the artists who come from the ground up, the ones without the galleries, the ones without a built-in audience, the ones who aren't part of some big cultural machine, y'all are forced to climb a hill everyone else gets carried across. So help me process this just for a second, right? Why does someone who create from the heart, from their culture, from their childhood, from their lived experience, have to work harder than someone whose personality simply fits what's trending? Why do we accept that? Right? Isn't it strange that some of the best artists alive right now might never be seen because they're not good at performance? And when I say performance, I'm not talking about performance art, but persona performance, right? Self-marketing, online storytelling, brand building, networking, being likable enough for institutions to trust you, being connected enough for creators to take you seriously. It's not about the art anymore. It's about whether the art is profitable. And real artists, the ones who work from the soul, they are almost never the most profitable. They're too real, it's too raw, too honest, too outside the system, too something, right? So the system pushes them out. And here's the part that hurts to say is that the art world wasn't created for people without that infrastructure. It wasn't created for people from small towns. It wasn't created for people without money. It wasn't created for people from marginalized places. It wasn't created for kids who discovered art in their rooms and backyards, in broken places. It wasn't created for the people who actually need art the most. It was created for people who already have access. And in a world like that, the ground up artist is always going to feel like they need to work twice as hard, because in many ways, they do. But I think here's something I want you to kind of hold on to, because it matters, is that the artists with the deepest roots grow slower, but they grow stronger. Loud artists rise fast. The performers rise fast. The ones who burn bright just for a moment rise fast. But the artists who build their work from the heart, the ones who create something that outlives a trend or a gallery or this hype cycle, they rise quietly, slowly, and permanently. Real art takes longer to bloom, but when it does, it's not going to rot. So if you feel overlooked right now, it doesn't mean you're not good. Okay, it means you're not loud. And believe it or not, that's a strength. It's not a weakness, because the artists who last the longest are always the ones who didn't depend on the system to validate them. They learned how to validate themselves, and that's the beginning of something real. So I want you to sit with something just for a second, and I need you to really hear it, because it explains almost everything we are all feeling right now, right? We're living in a time where the artists matter more than the art. And I'm not saying this in some poetic way, right? Not in a know the creator way, but in a literal financial algorithmic way. The person is the product, the art is an accessory. Isn't that strange? That we used to follow artists because of the art, and now we follow the art because of the artist. So when the person becomes the brand, the work becomes this side effect almost. I think the best way to explain it in the most simplest way is that persona is easier to digest than depth. So you can summarize a persona, you can package it, you can meme it, you can put it in a gallery poster, you can turn it into a TikTok, you can build a hype cycle around it. Depth, meaning, skill, technique, world building, craft, all of those take time to understand, and time is the one thing that the modern world refuses to give. So help me process this. We live in a culture where everything moves fast, right? That people want to know who you are before they even care about what you make. And if your persona doesn't fit the type of person the industry wants right now, then you're going to stay invisible. And it's not that your art isn't good, it's that you don't match the aesthetics of visibility. And that hits artists from all over the world the hardest, because if you don't have access to certain spaces, certain cities, or scenes, networks, your art never really gets to enter the conversation. You can be the most talented person in your entire country, but if the gatekeepers don't see you, then you don't exist. That's insane. And here's something even harder to swallow, is that social media made it worse. It did. We thought the internet would make things fair. We thought it would level the playing field. We thought anyone could rise if they were good enough, but the internet didn't create equality. It just created exposure capitalism. So now you have to be a performer, a marketer, a storyteller, a graphic designer, a video editor, personality, influencer, and entrepreneur, and somehow at the end of the day still make your art, right? Be an artist. It's exhausting, and it's not natural at all, because real artists, the ones who create from pain or culture or curiosity, loneliness or meaning, they don't want to perform. I don't want to perform. I'm sorry, I'm not going to do that. They want to create, but the art world doesn't reward creation. It rewards performance. And when art becomes this performance, the people who refuse to perform just become ghosts. So that feeling when you post your work and it just disappears? No one sees it, no one shares it, no one really engages with you. It feels like you're shouting into a void. But here's the truth, it's not that your art isn't good, it's just that you didn't perform it enough around it. Because online, they want storytelling, they want stories that sells the art. The artist sells the art. The persona sells the art. The art rarely sells itself anymore. And I think that's why so many real artists feel lost, because their strength has nothing to do with the persona. Their strength is the work. but the world isn't rewarding that work yet. So you see, here's the thing they never really get to tell you is that fast fame is fragile. Slow recognition is very solid. And artists who rise from persona fall when the persona fades. So artists who rise from substance grow when the world finally slows down enough to listen. And the world always slows down eventually. People are getting bored of the noise. People are getting tired of trends. People crave honesty. People want depth. People want work that actually says something. And I think that's why the artists who come from the ground up, the ones who build alone, practice alone, dream alone, last the longest. Because their work wasn't shaped by what's popular. It was shaped by what's real. And real always wins in the end. It's not going to be fast. It's not loud, but it's permanent. So if you feel like you have to work harder just to be seen, you're right. But that doesn't mean you're losing. It means you're building something the world hasn't caught up with. And when it does, it won't forget you.